Try to remember the first time you saw your mother's face. You can't, not the color of the room, not the sound of your own name, not the weight of being held for the first time. Ask anyone alive, you get the same answer. The earliest memory most adults can produce sits around age 3.5. Everything before that seems erased, as if it never happened. Sigmund Freud noticed this in 1899. He called it infantile amnesia, spent pages trying to explain why a mind that clearly worked in infancy left behind almost nothing an adult could recall. For decades, the easy answer was that babies simply couldn't form memories yet, that the machinery wasn't built. That answer is wrong, and researchers proved it. In a crib in New Jersey, in the 1980s, Carolyn Rovey Collier at Rutgers University tied a ribbon from a mobile to the ankle of 3-month-old infants. The babies kicked, the mobile spun, and within minutes, they learned the connection. Weeks later, researchers brought the same babies back, hung the same mobile, and the infants started kicking before anyone touched them. Proof the memory lasted, stored somewhere, retrievable weeks later, on demand. So the problem was never that babies can't remember. The problem is that the kind of memory a baby forms doesn't survive into adulthood. As a story you can tell. To understand why, look at the hippocampus, the structure that files new experience into long-term storage. Most of the brain stops producing new neurons early. The hippocampus keeps making them for years, a process called neurogenesis. That should protect memory. It erases it instead. In 2014, Paul Franklin and Sheena Jocelyn at the Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto ran an experiment on infant mice. They trained the mice to associate a chamber with a mild shock, then manipulated how many new neurons each mouse produced afterward. Mice pushed toward higher neurogenesis, forgot the chamber fast. Mice given drugs that slowed neurogenesis held on to the memory far longer than expected. New neurons, wiring themselves into the hippocampus, were overriding the circuits holding old information before those circuits ever had a chance to lock in. A baby's hippocampus produces new neurons at a pace it will never reach again. Every week rewires the very structure meant to hold the memory of that week. The storage room keeps getting torn down and rebuilt while the boxes are still being packed. Neurogenesis is only one piece. A second one is pattern separation. The hippocampus's ability to treat two similar experiences as distinct events instead of folding them into one blur. That ability isn't finished at birth. It keeps developing for years, which means an infant's memories of breakfast on Tuesday and breakfast on Wednesday tend to collapse into a single undifferentiated trace instead of staying separate. Without separation, there's nothing distinct left to retrieve. A third piece is even stranger. Autobiographical memory needs a self to attach itself to, a self the events happened to. Psychologists test this with a mirror. In 1979, Michael Lewis and Jean Brooks Gunn dabbed rouge on the noses of infants and set them in front of a mirror. Babies under about 18 months reached for the mirror. Not their own nose. They didn't yet recognize the reflection as themselves. Only after that recognition develops does a child start building memories around a continuous sense of self. And most of infancy happens before that switch flips. Then there's language. Elaine Reese and Harlene Hayne, working at the University of Otago in New Zealand, spent years studying how parents talk to children about the past. Kids whose parents used a detailed, elaborate style of reminiscing, asking questions, adding detail, prompting the child to fill in gaps, held on to earlier memories longer than kids whose parents gave flat one-line answers. Memory needs a narrative scaffold built out of words. Events that happened before a child could talk about them never got tagged in a form. The adult brain can later pull back out. Carol Peterson at Memorial University of Newfoundland tracked this fading directly. She interviewed children, starting at age 4, about their earliest memories, then went back to interview the same children years later. Memories that were vivid and detailed at 4 had often vanished completely by 8 or 9. The children weren't lying. The memories were simply gone, replaced by nothing. Peterson called this the childhood amnesia offset, and her data showed it happens gradually in waves, not all at once. On some fixed birthday. The age memory finally starts sticking. Isn't fixed across cultures either. Chi Wong at Cornell University compared earliest memories across countries and found that adults in the United States typically report a first memory around age 3.5, while adults in China and Korea report one closer to 4. Wang traced the gap to how parents in each culture talk with children about their own lives. Cultures that emphasize detailed personal storytelling produce earlier surviving memories. Biology sets the stage, but the conversations a child has decide which memories get built to last. None of these four systems work alone. The hippocampus rewiring itself, pattern separation, still under construction, a self not yet formed, language not yet available, all run on their own timeline. They overlap for years, and until all four line up, nothing that happens to a baby has a real chance of surviving into an adult memory. There's a twist to this story. Christina Alberini at New York University has spent years testing whether these early memories are actually gone or just locked away. In 2016, her lab trained infant rats to fear a specific chamber, then waited until the memory should have faded completely. The way infantile amnesia predicts, the rats showed no fear. They walked into the chamber like nothing had happened. But then Alberini's team gave the rats a small reminder, a brief, weaker version of the original experience. Months after training, the fear came back immediately, as strong as the day it was learned. Nothing had been erased, the trace was still sitting. Somewhere in the brain, the rats simply couldn't reach it. On their own, Alberini calls this a retrieval problem, rather than a storage problem, and if it holds true, in humans, everything you did as an infant might still be recorded somewhere in your skull, filed under a system your adult brain has lost the key to. One detail here should unsettle you a little. Ask a 6-year-old about something that happened when they were 3, and they can often describe it. The room, who was there, what was said. Ask that same child again at age 9, and the memory is frequently gone. The forgetting isn't a single wall you hit on your 3rd birthday. It keeps happening quietly for years after the events themselves, erasing memories that briefly survived the earliest gap, only to be lost later in the same rebuilding process. This creates an odd problem. If you ask enough adults about their first memory, some will describe standing in a crib or being pushed in a stroller as a newborn, with total confidence. Psychologists have tested these claims directly. Carol Peterson, the same researcher who tracked the amnesia offset in Newfoundland, found that a portion of adults reporting memories from before age 2 were describing events that never happened, the way they remembered them, reconstructed instead. From family photos and stories repeated at dinner tables, so many times they hardened into something that felt personally witnessed. The brain doesn't file these reconstructions differently from real memories. Both come with the same sense of having been there. Elizabeth Loftus at the University of California, Irvine, spent decades showing how easily a detailed, plausible memory can be built entirely out of suggestion with no actual event underneath it. So the warm image some people carry of their own christening or their first steps, caught by a smiling relative, often isn't a memory of the moment. It's a memory of being told about the moment, dressed up to look like the real thing. So the years you can't remember weren't empty. You were held, fed, spoken to, frightened, comforted, thousands of times, by people who loved you, before you had any way to file a single one of those moments as a story. Attachment patterns, reflexes, the sense of who is safe and who isn't, all of that got built during the exact stretch of life you can't play back. You don't remember any of it. It shaped you anyway.